The summer of 2023 is looking to be red hot, and we're not just talking about the weather. We've been catching up on Summer Game Fest, a celebration of games where brands such as Xbox, Wholesome Games, and Capcom bring us the latest news, trailers, and updates involving their respective game titles. Here at the 20M Podcast, we've been able to stream quite a few of these showcases and directs, admittedly at some pretty strange hours in our part of the world. Suffice to say, it was a very sleepless week for us, but it more than made up for in hype. What are the upcoming games we're most looking forward to? And which cozy indie games caught our eye over at the Wholesome Direct? Plus, Rino and Arief nerd out over We Love Katamari REROLL plus Royal Reverie and the latest Magic the Gathering Lord of the Rings crossover. This is the 20M Podcast. Hey guys, welcome to the 20M Podcast, your deep dive into games and the people behind them. I am your host for today. My name is Rino, and today I have my usual co-host, Arief. Say hi, Arief.
Hello. Why did you say usual when I said last episode I said illustrious for you? Like, you can't think of a better adjective for me?
My fantastic co-host.
No, now it's just sarcastic. We can move on.
All right. Well, how are you doing today?
I'm doing really good. Thanks for asking. Do you see how normal I am now? You like tend to bash me for not reciprocating your intros. But,
you didn't ask me how I was. You just
okay. Yeah, you're right. So maybe I am a bad. How are you today? How are you?
I was great until about 5 seconds ago when I wasn't asked.
What do we want to talk about today, Rino? What's been happening this past week?
Well, my first point, which I wanted to bring up because I'm a concerned friend, was: have you caught up on your sleep?
Absolutely not.
It's been a week, hasn't it? It's been a big week for games, for us, for everyone, honestly, who's been following this space, I suppose. What has been happening?
We have had a lack of sleep because of the Summer Game Fest extravaganza, where we've been reacting to a lot of showcases, both AAA and indies. But boy, let me tell you, before we get to some of those topics throughout the show where we kind of deep dive into some of those showcases and stuff that we loved, it's been rough because the time zones have been crazy for us. We've been live streaming our reactions here on the YouTube channel, at least for those that are watching on YouTube. But boy, let me tell you, I've been tired. We've been pushing out so much content as well. I'm exhausted yet excited. Both did those both start with E? That's how tired I am.
Exhausted and excited.
Yes, it is. I'm both spectrum of E's. You know?
I don't know if this is outing myself as a terrible person, but the number of tweets I've seen from like journal friends and just like industry friends of being like, I'm so tired. I'm like, me too, man. Me too. Like, I don't wish there was for my colleagues and my peers, but like, at least we're all in this together. I'm like, I'm tired too, man. Let's get that 15-minute nap in before we continue on.
Imagine it's not even time zone for them. It's just like because they've been covering so much as well. It's like, and for us, it's like the 1-2 punch. It's like, okay, get content out, but also like sleep like 3 a.m.
Some of the tweets I've seen, especially like from people out in Australia, because the time zone is even worse for them. I think it's just like, if you're covering Summer Game Fest right now and it's 7 a.m., you are allowed to Uber Eats McDonald's to your house for breakfast. Like that is the rule. I feel that so hard.
I mean, it's really funny. We were talking about this off stream, but for those that don't know, I mean, like the summer time is usually historically when the games industry is in full force because a lot of games are announced. And it used to be E3, rest in peace E3. That used to be the major events where all the trailers would come out, all the showcases would premiere, and all the games would be announced and stuff for the next coming years. But in lieu of E3, we had Summer Game Fest, but it's still pretty much like, I think a lot of people online are calling it non-E3 E3 over the past couple of years. And this one especially because there are even more showcases, even more stuff to highlight. So I know we did a lot of content about it, but yeah, I mean, the general PSA to any showcase organizers over the now or the foreseeable future, please potentially think about making some showcases Southeast Asia time zone friendly. I'm begging you, because I cannot stay up to 3 a.m. again to watch another 3-hour long direct.
Exactly. I think the only one that was at a semi-normal time zone for us that we planned to watch was the Capcom showcase, which was at 7 a.m. Japan time, 6 a.m. Malaysia time. And by that, and just for that reason alone, like I'm 100% a Capcom stan now. Like my favorite business in the game right now. Best guys.
Yeah. I thought that one was really good. Yeah, but it's just really funny. I mean, we have I know we're going to talk about some showcases later on in the episode, but there's definitely some moments where you could totally tell we are zoning out because purely, the games are awesome, and it's not a knock on the developers or the publishers at all. But it's like it's 3:30 a.m. like local time. And I'm on content. I'm like trying to look awake and stuff like that, but my mind is just like bed soon, maybe.
It was great that there were both of us like streaming it, and then we had a couple of folks in who were the night owls of Southeast Asia also checking in, but because it was like holding each other accountable. I think if it was just myself streaming, I would just slowly be like
exactly.
That would have been the stream. So yeah, good time. Just interesting though as well. Like I wonder what is, I guess prior, like you mentioned, it would be at E3 where everything gets announced, but like what is the rationale of announcing so many games in one space? Like, like both of us in preparation for the stream, we're like, oh, what did we actually watch? We got to go back and like remember what was some of these titles. There's just so many coming out.
Yeah, I completely agree. It's really fun because you get a lot of interesting reveals and trailers and deep dives and further teases of games that are coming out in the coming months, which is really exciting, but also like a couple of games that are slated to release over the next couple of years. So it's an interesting overwhelmingness where it's quite fascinating because we've been seeing a lot more directs throughout the year compared to like, let's say 10 years ago in the games industry. When I say directs, I mean showcases, right? I know Nintendo just like completely coined that term. And it's like pretty popular now, but the whole like we don't have to abide by this summer overwhelmingness of announcements. We can kind of announce our showcases later on the year, earlier on the year, and stuff like that. But despite that, I'm still so happy that this week is still a celebration of games. And I think we were talking about this before. Or I tweeted this as well, where even though there was a lot, it's still a reminder that the games industry is an industry to be celebrated. And I can't be more excited about seeing, indie developers, even AAA developers just finally being able to talk about their games, because development cycles are long. A lot of things are, under NDA, or they don't want to announce things too early. So it's truly a celebration despite the overwhelmingness. So I'm excited because there seems to be like a game for everybody at these showcases.
Yeah. It's definitely something that feels very unique to this industry. Like you don't get something like this for film or for TV shows, like oh, here are all the TV shows that are coming out in the next 3 years. And this one's being dropped tomorrow or anything like that. So that part is definitely very cool. And I know like our respective like WhatsApp group chats have been like blowing up this past week of people just being excited for different games. So that's all been, it feels like we're all kind of in this together. Really, really cool.
Yeah, the closest thing we probably in the industry is kind of like, you do get some of the showcases, like, when HBO Max had their like HBO slate for the next couple of years, and we were, just watched The Flash last night, and James, I showed the people that I was watching The Flash with James Gunn's version of like his showcase. It was just him talking to a camera, talking about the next slate of the DC movies, mm-hmm. right? You get CinemaCon, I think, in Brazil every year, if I'm not mistaken. So like there are tidbits, but there's nothing like the games industry one where gamers are just totally on the same page, where we like, this is the Xbox showcase will be announced, you know what I mean? Like everybody will be watching it, or at least you'll see them percolated, like news articles percolated throughout. So it definitely is like a almost unique, like the concept isn't unique, but the like excitement and the condensed version industry wide is you're nailing it. It's so unique to the games industry.
Awesome stuff. So what have been some of the big highlights for yourself, Arief? I know we're going to go probably like showcase by showcase, the big things that we noticed. So the first one I know that we streamed was Summer Game Fest itself, right? The one with Jeff Keighley. That was on, was it Thursday, Friday?
That was the first show of the Summer Games Fest kickoff showcase.
Yeah, the kickoff.
So that one was really fun.
And it really kicked off. If I remember, again, our first 2 a.m. show, we're half asleep, trying to stay awake. But boom, it was like Mortal Kombat, straight up. Decapitated heads, arms flying everywhere, blood splattering. We're like, all right, we're awake. We're here for the show. What did you think of that?
I thought it was really good. I'm not a big fighting game guy, and I think Mortal Kombat is an interesting one because it's one of those ones where a lot of casual gamers, my casual gamer friends, it's like FIFA or Mortal Kombat. It's like the more casual fighting game, in my opinion, that people get into. I don't know if it's because of the gore or because of the aesthetic and whatnot. But Mortal Kombat 1 looks super interesting to me. I'm not a big Mortal Kombat person, so I apologize. I don't know the characters that well. I didn't grow up with it. But let me tell you, one of the most exciting things that I saw at the Mortal Kombat 1 reveal showcase demo scenario on Summer Games Fest was the cameo feature. And I know we talked about that during our live stream, because let me tell you, Reno, I'm not a fan of fighting games, but I am a big fan growing up of Marvel versus Capcom. Do you remember that?
Yeah, of course. I think my first one was like, it was called Marvel Superheroes versus Street Fighter. That was
Yes, we talked about this on the podcast before. Yes. Yeah, I think for me it's more so because like I think Marvel versus Capcom 2, definitely 3. I don't know. I don't remember if 1 does it, but you can choose multiple fighters, so you can swap between the 2 fighters. And I would remember I would be like War Machine or something, and then you could swap to the next fighter by clicking a button. So I know the Mortal Kombat 1 cameo feature is not exactly you're choosing 2 fighters, but you get a secondary fighter, kind of like an assist trophy is what people are kind of attributing it towards, kind of like Smash Bros. But just a more succinct kind of combat version of that. So that's what gets me going for Mortal Kombat 1. It's funny, it's not the violence, it's not the story, which they seem to be really prioritizing. It's like, oh my God, that reminds me of Marvel versus Capcom. I'm totally going to try it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm similar to you. I didn't grow up with Mortal Kombat, the IP, but for some reason it was always there. Like I knew about it, or you would see people selling, I don't know if they were like just like straight to video kind of movies that they made, but I was definitely aware of it. But and I've probably never mentioned this. If I can find the actual game, I will show it to you. But my first experience playing Mortal Kombat was a parody. It was called like Cartoon Combat or something. It was part of a compendium of games, and it was like fighting style. But then the characters would just do weird things. Like instead of doing like proper moves, they would just like pull each other's like pants down. It was like a kind of like a.
I have no idea what this is, and I'm scared to go through the B-roll, the potential B-roll of what people will be seeing on screen.
And I need to find this and show you. But like that was when I realized like, okay, it's a spin-off of another game called Mortal Kombat. And then I think that was like my first like childlike memory of this franchise. But to your point, I feel like a lot of the fighting games are, at least from what I've seen of like Street Fighter 6 and the way that they're building up Tekken 8, there's definitely a movement towards, I guess, more story-based fighting games. So it's not just about, the brawl. And I guess to an extent that never really changes, like from Tekken 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, like it's always pretty much the same characters, or like reincarnations of the same characters, or the character's brother, sister, mother, uncle. They've done like everything. So now I feel like a lot of these games are trying to sort of connect it and keep, because that's what keeps people interested. They're invested in characters and stories as opposed to just playing the same kind of moveset over and over again. So really, really exciting to see how it played out. Kind of felt like a film. That was another thing I think we talked about a lot. Like a lot of the trailers felt like cinematic trailers, right?
Yeah, I think a lot of I always feel like you want to talk about some weird niche games, like topics, whilst we're on this topic of trailers. I remember growing up, like, I guess like being a teenager, and my housemate introduced me to Blur Studios, which is a studio that did contract work and did cinematic game trailers, and they were the coolest game trailers of all time. I think one of my favorites was the one of the Arkham games. They did the Batman versus Deadpool fight scene in the snow. They also did, if I'm not mistaken, Halo. Maybe, I don't remember if the Destiny trailers were by Blur Studios, but look them up, everybody. Like Elder Scrolls, I can't remember, but like Blur Studios had some of the coolest animations, but they were all cinematic, right? And I remember that was the prime of Blur. But yeah, I mean, I think a lot of them did seem very cinematic, but I think you bring up an interesting point where we were talking offline of like, there's a lot of these trailers that felt like movie trailers rather than game trailers. And to me, it's like, what is the difference between a movie trailer and a game trailer at the end of the day,
I think especially for the AAA, like the way that I recognized, like the way that it seemed like a movie trailer was, there would be like the suspenseful music, then like a lot of like movement, and then like a deep sort of like baritone male voice, like coming soon, and then like explosions, and then like a clip of the character saying like, we must fight, that kind of thing. And it feels like a lot of the Rings trailer, especially if it's like a high fantasy game. And I don't know if it's just like games imitating movies imitating games, but that's kind of how it felt for, especially the AAA titles. We didn't see that as much with the Wholesome Direct trailers for sure.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's like if you put upwards of $1 million in a property, upwards of $10 million in a property, they have to be like the most marketing-y kind of like thing, which is, I guess, like what theater or cinema is, the cinema industry kind of like does with their trailers. But regardless, if a trailer gets me excited, I get excited. So whether it be a cinematic, whether it be gameplay, whether it be just like the storytelling of the trailer itself, I get super excited.
Awesome. What were the other titles that got you excited at the Summer Game Fest kickoff?
I mean, I think Summer Game Fest was an interesting one. The one that I will share before I get to a specific game is like, I said this live on our reaction, but Summer Game Fest is interesting because I think Jeff Keighley owned that it was a summer show. And what I mean by that is like, I feel like you could wear shorts and you could wear a Hawaiian t-shirt and you can just enjoy the games that are coming out versus opening night live at Gamescom, which is kind of like a bit more professional. It's like you're trying to make a statement that this is a showcase, and then Game Awards as well, which is like more Oscar feeling, and it is official, and it is very like, check out this like crazy new announcement that we secured, you know? So it's cool that Jeff is making Summer Game Fest feel like the expectations are slightly lower in terms of some of the big announcements that we get, because, you know, they were laughing on stage. Even he was like, hey, we have Nicolas Cage coming out, and he was just like, what? I don't know how this is happening, but we got him on stage, right? So I just want to note that tone for Summer Games Fest. But at the end of the day, they had to have something big, and boy, did they have something big with Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. So I was really excited to see that.
Yeah, no, definitely to your point about like they really brought the summer and the fest of Summer Game Fest, right? They really kept it casual, and I really like that. That was a good touch. But yeah, Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. I know I've talked about this before. I've only played the original Final Fantasy VII, like the Popeye's arms for that Cloud had kind of Final Fantasy VII. But like the way that the franchise has like sort of spinned off so much, like I don't even recognize like what it's about anymore. So I don't know. Why don't you talk a bit more about like what got you excited? What was it about Rebirth that got you excited?
Yeah, and I think one thing to note is that I didn't play Final Fantasy VII growing up. My first Final Fantasy, for those that don't know, is Final Fantasy 13, one of the best Final Fantasies of all time, according to everybody who's played it. But I only played Final Fantasy VII in a response to prep for 7 Remake. So I played it about a year before 7 Remake came out. So I'm actually quite new to the Final Fantasy VII universe. I never watched Advent Children. I never played Crisis Core. And we've talked about this in previous episodes. You can check out some of our coverage for some of those items. But what gets me excited about Rebirth is that it definitely seems like they are taking stuff from the original, but almost going in a different direction. And I don't want to spoil the remake story or what I'm trying to say, like what that really means for those that have yet to play those games. But I'm just really excited that it almost seems like a new frontier. But what gets me most excited is weirdly, the nostalgia still sticks for me. Like, even though I know I've never played Final Fantasy VII, I know Chocobo, the Chocobo Ranch area, right? I know when they go to Junon and some of the backgrounds that they have. So I felt a little bit of weird nostalgia, being like, oh my god, like I can't believe they're putting that in this high fidelity 3D semi-open world looking kind of game. But again, what really gets me excited is it just looks so good. It just looks so good. There's a scene where it's almost as if you have like tag team kind of like battle animations where Cloud and Tifa go back to back, and it was just chef's kiss. Like, oh my god, this is like everything that I want. And I think you have Red 13 and Yuffie also do like a team up, and you see Aerith in the background coming. So I'm just so excited for the combat. I'm so excited for the animation work. I'm so excited for how it feels. But as a Final Fantasy fan, like Rebirth looks like it's shaping up good. I know for you, there was a certain character that was missing. Reno, can you please tell me about your disappointment with the trailer for Final Fantasy VII Rebirth?
Where the hell was Vincent Valentine? We are all only here for Vincent Valentine. I couldn't believe he was missing. But I mean, to your point as well, as long as you're on the internet, as long as you're even on the fringe of like games, right? Everyone knows who Cloud is. So even if you've not played the games, I think you've seen him so much, or you've seen these characters so much, or you know the story, you know that Sephiroth is like the greatest villain of all time. So when a game like this comes out, somehow you do get nostalgia, even if it's not something specifically pertaining to your childhood. And I think that's just kind of like the magic of Final Fantasy, the franchise, but specifically, I guess, Final Fantasy VII. Really, really cool stuff.
Yeah, I'm excited for. I can't describe this game in any other way except for I'm excited. You know what's an interesting discussion though is that it's surprising to see it at the show because one of the biggest Final Fantasy games, I mean Final Fantasy 16, is coming out literally in about a week our time of recording. It's kind of crazy that they're setting up Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. I think the industry and a lot of friends were kind of like 50-50 to see if it was going to be at this show, because it'd be like, oh, a lot of the marketing should be towards making sure that units sell for Final Fantasy 16, but at the same time, it's cool that they're ending the marketing cycle for Final Fantasy 16 almost for the most part, and then slowly starting to ramp up the marketing cycle for Final Fantasy 7 Rebirth, which we know will be coming out early 2024. But the biggest question that I have is, where is Kingdom Hearts 4? We saw it a couple of years ago. I cried at the reveal trailer. We know that the Kingdom Hearts 4 development team helped on Final Fantasy 16. And we know Tetsuya Nomura is doing both Kingdom Hearts and producing both Kingdom Hearts and Final Fantasy 7 Rebirth. But let me just tell you, as a fan of Final Fantasy 7 Rebirth, I would be happy if they didn't show Final Fantasy 7 Rebirth and they showed Kingdom Hearts instead. That would have been the most like mind-blowing, like, psych, you're getting some Kingdom Hearts 4 news.
That would have been such a big, like, I don't know, Uno reverse or something, because everyone kind of expected to hear more 7 news, but no one would have expected a Kingdom Hearts drop. But I think the point, the point here with what Square Enix has done is, like, traditionally, I think it's like Final Fantasy 7, all right, that's done. We look forward to 8. That's done. Look forward to 9. But 7 as a franchise has become its own thing. It's such a big beast that it's like it's on its own marketing timeline. And they have enough resources to be plugging several Final Fantasy games at once. And there's a market for different people as well. Like, not everyone who plays 16 might want 7, not everyone who wants 7 might want 16, that sort of thing. It just becomes such a big based on its own, particularly with 7. And then Kingdom Hearts is its own thing as well. I think if they had dropped it, I don't think it would have affected, whether it would cannibalize like the attention from other Final Fantasies. Like, I don't think that would have been the case. It's just the games have just become their own separate identities so much that they've got their own fan base, I feel.
Yeah, and I mean, I also just want to, whilst we're talking about this Final Fantasy dive, right? Before we move on, I just want to acknowledge that like there's been leaks of Final Fantasy 9 remake and Final Fantasy Tactics remake in the works at Square Enix. So many, not just the Nvidia leaks, but there's so many interviews. I think there was one interview where somebody on one of the Final Fantasy teams was like, got asked about Final Fantasy Tactics, and he was like, "Oh, you should ask the Tactics team," implying that the Tactics team is a team at Square Enix. You know what I mean? So my curiosity more so is like somebody who kind of like watches all these showcases, like obsesses over Square Enix news, is where is the rumored Final Fantasy 9 remake, and then where is Final Fantasy Tactics? Because I totally agree with you. 7 is on its own trajectory, but where are these other titles that are also huge Final Fantasy properties? And I can't imagine how whoever is like marketing lead at Square like sets up the domino pieces for all these properties, right? Because these are all major Final Fantasy titles. But I will say the one that I wasn't going to bring up that I just remembered is, did you see the Final Fantasy 9 Memoria project?
Oh, is this the fan backed one? And it's sort of like the cinematic videos of like Vivi walking through the city. I've seen that. It looks really, really beautiful.
Yeah, I think it's a project that's been in the works for a long time. I think it's in Unreal 5. So they rendered it, or they created it in Unreal 5, and it just looks amazing. Like, talk about 9 remake. That project looks phenomenal. It's beautifully rendered. Vivi looks cute as hell. But they take a lot of the heart, like they expand on that Final Fantasy 9 world, because you only see it in the original. Camera angles are different, so PS1, and gameplay is so PS1. This truly feels like a modern interpretation of it. I'm shocked Square hasn't taken it down. But for Final Fantasy fans, like, check out the Final Fantasy 9 Memoria project. It looks gorgeous, and everything I feel like we think about when we think about modern day remakes.
Yeah, I'm sure the lawyers were just about to, and then the dev team are so impressed. They're like, wait, let them cook. And then one more Final Fantasy drop that happened at Summer Game Fest, Final Fantasy Ever Crisis. How was that for you? Were you excited?
Yeah, I don't know. It's like, look, as somebody who plays the Kingdom Hearts mobile games, like I played Unchained Key, Dark Road is on there. I love mobile iterations of games, especially when they give you more story and, just something to have you play on a daily basis and collect items. Ever Crisis is a weird one because I still don't really know what it is. Supposedly, I believe when they first pitched it, they said they wanted you to have a mobile companion of Final Fantasy 7. So you get to go through essentially the entirety of Final Fantasy 7, but on mobile. But they're introducing new characters, it seems like. And then this trailer, they had really cool outfits for Aerith and Cloud, and Kombat looks like the remake, like, 3D assets from remake and stuff like that. But then it goes back to like almost polygonal chibi versions of 7. So I'm going to be super honest with you, Reno. I do not know how to feel about Ever Crisis. I'm excited. I have no idea what the heck it is, but I'm going to play it. I mean, what does it do for you as somebody who has, grew up on 7?
I mean, I was really intrigued by it. It looked really, really cool. And I guess to your point as well, the whole like, let's dominate the player's mind 24/7. If they're not at their desktop, if they're not at their TV, home console, they're on their phone. It's like, we're going to like inject Cloud, Zack, Aerith, everyone into their veins like all the time. I actually never played any mobile Final Fantasy games. I think a lot of it just wasn't really advertised, like where I was growing up, or maybe they were like just like mostly based in Japan. So I'm curious. Like it definitely looks amazing, and like I think mobile games have like taken such a big turn in the last few years. Like they're proper games to be reckoned with. They're not just cash grabs. They're not just like you're Bejeweled or trying to think of like what games my parents play. I can't think of any right now, but I think I will definitely give it a try as well. I don't know how to feel either, but it's accessible. At least it's on mobile. Everyone can play it if they want to. So we'll definitely give that a try when it's out. Moving on from say something, Irv.
No, I just like there's so much Final Fantasy VII. I'm really happy for that property, but I was going to go through the motions of like the discourse that's been happening over the past few years, which is give me the golden saucer, let me date Barrett. Like, I can't wait for this part. I can't wait for this part.
Barrett. I've not had that discourse.
Oh, really? No. We joke about it all the time in my group that I play Final Fantasy 14 with. It's like, God, I can't wait to date Barrett at the Golden Saucer. Like, screw Aerith and Tifa, Because in the original, you can go on that one date. You can choose a date companion to go with. Yeah. So I'm inundated by Final Fantasy 7 stuff, which is why maybe I'm a little bit like overwhelmed by it. But it's one of those things where just don't give me, same thing with 16 almost, like don't give me anything else. I just want to experience 7 in all its glory via all these games. Just put it in my hands.
Yeah. Super excited for all of that. I'm gonna have date Barrett stuck in my head for the rest of today. Let's talk about Wholesome Direct. That was I know that was a showcase you were the most excited for. Like I don't think I've ever seen you that excited at 2 a.m. I guess I think prior to that you'd messaged me. I guess we were messaging each other just to make kind of like low key make sure we were both awake, right?
Awake,
yeah. Like get a sweater, get a warm non-caffeinated drink. Like it's like time to get cozy. And I was really hyped for that because I knew it was something really special for you. How did you find it this year?
It was okay. I mean, the reason why I love the Wholesome Direct, for those that don't know, is that it came out during the pandemic. And I think there should be an essay written about how, and I think they did do a GDC talk. Victoria and, Kim Chica did, and somebody else I think was on that panel. They did do a talk on, the explosion of wholesome games at GDC. But it's a really fascinating one because post-pandemic, I feel like even during the pandemic, people kind of felt that, you're at home. A lot of these games that are coming out that are AAA are violent. They're, prepping for Elden Ring, you're playing Dark Souls, and like I love Bloodborne, but I can only play Bloodborne so much during the pandemic, right? So I feel like the wholesome games as a concept was such a beautiful thing to come out of the pandemic, in a weird way, where hey, let's focus on just beautiful, wholesome. Like you said, it's like drinking a nice mug of tea. It's like relaxing in pajamas. It's like just playing a cozy game, right? So I've loved the Wholesome Direct, but they also execute the Direct so well, where they focus on indie developers, not only in one part of the world, but global indie developers as well. They give a voice to developers, but they just showcase amazing games that you would typically maybe wouldn't get highlighted at big industry showcases, despite there being a greater presence of indie games at showcases recently. So yeah, I fell in love with the Wholesome Direct a couple of years ago, and I thought this year's one was okay. I think if you're talking about the show in general, I think the production was a little bit off. I think just some editing stuff, and I'm sure they were really stressed to get everything together, and the fact that it came out is a huge accomplishment, but it didn't feel as great to me tonally as last year's one. But at the end of the day, some amazing games were shown, and it did feel overwhelming because of how many games were on there. But at the same time, it's like, celebrate more games. Like that just gives more opportunities for more developers to show off their stuff. How did you feel about the Wholesome Direct overall?
I was very overwhelmed. I think there were at least, I think they said 70, but 70 to 80 games that were being shown. And I felt like, so when I was growing up, my younger brother was going to these classes where they would do like flashcards in front of him. I think they were trying to like instill like photographic memory. And I felt like that child, like sitting there just like, okay. And it's just like, trailer. I was like, oh my God. Like before I could even like process that I like this game, it's on to the next one. So it was quite a lot for me. But I also see that's the other side, which is like, let's try and fit in as many games as possible. You know, like a few seconds of screen time in front of a global audience is better than nothing. If it really resonated with you, you probably write it down and check it out later, which I think we'll see when we discuss the games that we liked, right? There's a couple that just stick with you and you're like, okay, let me rewatch that trailer later on, or let me like do more research about the team behind it, things like that. So it was good. A bit of an overwhelming time again for like a 2 a.m. presentation for us. But I guess the comment you made about like, you know, it sort of came out of like a difficult time, which is really cool. But also just like it makes me wonder like what is the state of mental health in general, that, you know, there are definitely strong themes that you see in a lot of these wholesome games, like really cozy games, like zero stakes, like you're safe kind of games, or games about like frogs and cats and rabbits, like small endearing little animals, games about making tea or cooking or something, like just really peaceful games, which I like. But I also wonder like what is causing people to go towards these like games that give them this kind of comfort. Like what's I think it's a bit of a commentary about society these days and like how difficult life can be, that we need these kind of escapes.
I laughed out loud, I think, during our Wholesome Direct reactions when you said that. It's like, what does it say about us that we need a game to like ease our mind by watering a plants in game, you know, or or throwing out trash in game, and that feels rejuvenating or cathartic or whatever, right? But despite the humor, yeah, you're right. It is quite sad, but at the same time, to me, it's also quite it's something that excites me, because you can bring to life something that you think is mundane and have it be showcased in gameplay that is really interesting. Or sometimes people just need a break, and although you might be living a second life like in these games, or of things that you would be doing in your real life anyway, to me it's just there's something about it. And it goes to this whole like farming sim kind of commentary as well, right? Where a lot of games at these showcases, not only the Wholesome Direct, but most showcases, like a lot of indie games have farming mechanics, which is what we talked about on those on our reactions as well. But it's just one of those, like, maybe being productive, like you said, is what we need to feel as society, this hyper-capitalist society. And at least we get to do that in a game rather than feed the corporate machine. We're getting into a weird like meta commentary about, yeah, technically maybe some games are financed by corporate machines as well, that all they want you to do is be productive. But all said and done, I'm excited for innovative gameplay, and I'm excited for just experiences that are not your first person shoot magic explore, you know, kind of a scenario. So that's what I love. But what were some of the games that caught you off guard, or maybe that you remember from the Wholesome Direct, that are either about productivity or are just like cute as hell?
Cute as hell, definitely for me, the one that stood out for me was like Usagi Shima, which is like Rabbit Island in Japanese. It instantly, I looked at it and it was like it just unlocked this core memory in my mind of playing another mobile game called Neko Atsume. And in Neko Atsume, it's just like you have a cat, or you have several cats. You just log in every now and then when there's like the cat bowl is empty, you just fill it up, and then just by the games, like the game itself decides like, oh, when cats come by, how many cats come by. And I think there's like a log somewhere in the game where like you can record how many cats come. I don't know 100% like everything about Usagi Shima, but just based on the trailer, it looks very similar. It's like, I think it's set up in like a very Japanese style house, and then there'll just be lots of rabbits around, and I'm sure there's a mechanic where you can like log, oh, which rabbit has come visit you. Very, very similar vibes, but it's like super cute. And again, about escapism, right? You're at your desk job that you hate so much. You're like, oh, like I just want to relax, go into my little rabbit island and then hang out with my rabbits for a while, for like 5 minutes or something, and that's all you need. I think it serves that kind of purpose. But it's such a cute game. A lot of it comes down to just great art, great design, and it just kind of hooks you in that way.
Yeah, that one looked really cute. I think they revealed that one at the Game Awards wholesome snack bite thing that they did a couple months back. But yeah, it just looks so cute. Like, again, this whole animal theme, it's like, okay, we had cats are still a big prevalent part of indie games now. We had frogs last year at the Wholesome Direct. There were a lot of frog games at the Wholesome Direct last year, a couple frogs this year as well. But bunnies, where's the bunny love in indie games? So it's a nice break from typical like animal like characters that we have.
Yeah, definitely. So what was a highlight for you? What caught your eye?
Let me talk about, speaking of animal characters, you know how much of a fan I am of Pokemon. I want to talk about Beastieball. Beastieball is, in short, Pokemon playing competitive volleyball. Like, what a pitch, which is just extremely exciting. It's from the developers of Chicory, which is really cool. It's an indie game that it's been on my list for forever, and it just looks absolutely gorgeous. But they're basically making, like Pokemon with volleyball. So that one was such a one that caught me by surprise. I think it actually was shown off at Day of the Devs the day before the Wholesome Direct, but I didn't catch that show. But this one is one of those ones where it just looks so, like, how have people not iterated more on the Pokemon concept, right? Like, we did have Pokemon with guns. I forgot the
Pal World?
Pal World, right?
Pokemon with guns.
Yeah, and and then we had Temtem, I believe, which is like almost a direct competitor with Pokemon. We've had a couple of those like Pokemon ripoffs. This one to me is so cool because it's like, yes, it is literally Pokemon. They evolve, you can train them.
They looked like types. Pokemon. The designs look like uncannily like some very famous Pokemon that we all know.
Yeah, I think we were calling it out during the live reaction.
So and so, yeah.
Yeah, that's Altaria. That's a little that's a little Diglett. But yeah, to me, Beastieball gets me excited because it is the Pokemon concept in a different framing, and to me, that is creative and that's original, despite kind of taking a lot of Pokemon influences. So I'm just excited. Like, a sports Pokemon game is not what I would put on my list as one of my most anticipated indies. But yeah, I'm really excited to see Beastieball. I think it looks really cute, but also I'm gonna Top Gun the hell out of this game. I'm gonna stream it with like a headband on, with some like the tennis players. What do they put on the wrist? Like a sweat,
the sweatband. Yeah, the sweatbands.
Yeah, and I'm just gonna be like, all right, Chikorita, you need to go far right, serve it up for Totodile, and Totodile is gonna use water gun to smash.
You're gonna Asian dad your Pokemon. You're gonna
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
That's cool. On the topic of sports games, though, the one that caught my eye was Toasterball. It really, okay, in a sea of like you said, cats, frogs, every adorable animal, every farming sim, suddenly you just see a bunch of toasters on the screen, and I'm like, what is going on? It seems like it's a volleyball oriented game as well, but you're a toaster, and I think there's like 2 toasters on each side, and when they show the shots of them like reaching for the ball, it's like the toast ejecting from the toaster to like, I don't know, serve up or like smash the ball in. And I was like, I don't know what this is, but this looks fun. And I feel like this would make great streaming material.
Yeah, Toasterball looks wacky as heck. I think it looked like Rocket League, kind of like a take, right? But toaster. It just looks like one of those, like, I love concepts of indie games where mobility is an issue. Where it's like but you're supposed to like shimmy around as a toaster or like only use one mechanic to move. Like, to me, it's the funniest thing. I think on a serious note, it's like, I bring back this couch co-op concept. I know some games have been really reeling it in with games like It Takes Two, Overcooked, and Gang Beasts, and these like couch co-op games. Like, yeah, Toasterball, it's like just so reminds me of those weird, like, just weird games I used to play with my friends on the couch during the PS2 era.
I hope they do super well, and it's the start of like toaster meta, and then we'll start seeing the same, like, instead of cats and frogs and rabbits, it's going to be toaster games, like raise your own toaster farming sim, toaster RPG, or like a whole appliance series. This I'm calling this right now. That's my prediction for 2024. All right. What else? What else?
Yeah, I think I've been playing I've been playing indie games, I've been playing AAA games, and I actually watched a really interesting talk, not like obviously online. I didn't go to GDC, but there was a GDC talk from the Marvel Snap developer where, they created Marvel Snap and they looked at a variety of card games as influences. So not just like, things like Magic the Gathering, but also like Hearthstone. But they said like, hey, we should take inspiration from board games, right? Like, board games are games inherently. And let me tell you, when I saw this game called Baladins, I lost it. It's like just to talk about the aesthetic for a second, they have the almost like oh my god, what's the Link game that came out? The remake of the Legend of Zelda game that came out, where everything's super cute and hyper realistic toy kind of like aesthetic. Link's Awakening. The background it looks like the Link's Awakening aesthetic, where it looks like a super cute, gummy, almost texture looking background, but your characters are like paper cutouts almost, right? Cartoon characters that are almost like Adventure Time inspired. So to me, it's just board game like mechanics and gameplay on that kind of art style is something that got me super excited. So Baladins was on my list of like, oh my god, this looks like such a me thing, because I love playing board games with my friends and I love this like aesthetic. So Baladins was really, really doing it for me at the showcase. I'm excited to see what the gameplay loop actually is, because it does seem a bit, it does seem like a board game. So there is like a lot of mechanics and, adventuring and moving around and leveling up companions and whatnot. But I'm excited. I'm excited to learn more about that game.
It definitely had a very unique design and again stood out in the sea of like other indie games. And I guess the board game reference, but also, those like pop-up books, the ones where you open and then those things appear. That really made me think of those. And it's just like such a nostalgic take. And those books were, I don't know, like really underrated in my opinion, like growing up, like how intricate the designs were, how, you have to make it so that the characters like really like stand up as you open the book. And balance really reminded me of that.
Yeah, I completely agree. It's again, this we're in a phase of indie games where even though indie games are lower budget than AAA, there are maybe some that just wow you with the creativity and the innovation. Like again, to cross art styles like that. We were talking about Spider-Verse briefly off the show, right, prior to recording this, but just the melding of art styles is something that I feel like indies do best, and this aesthetic is something that I'm excited for.
And speaking of aesthetics, this one game that reminded us both, I think we both like exclaimed it almost at the same time when we were watching the live stream. So Fields of Mistria looks exactly like Sailor Moon, or I guess the 90s shoujo era anime. Did that excite you?
Yeah, I thought this was their one more thing kind of concept, right? Which is quite surprising to me. I didn't know why, other than the aesthetic, but I think the aesthetic says it all. It like the animation literally reminds me. I didn't watch a lot of anime from that era, right? But it just to me is so Sailor Moon. But it's another one of these like almost farming sim kind of adventure games. But let me tell you, the fact that it looks like an homage to that era of games, I think is quite apparent. But yeah, this game looks super exciting. Even the menu looks like reminds me of Game Boy Advance games as well, right? Like I don't know if it's in that aspect ratio. I doubt it, but it just looks like a modern. It looks like it's going to take all the mechanics of all the farming sims that have come out since, and it's going to be a modern, almost farming sim game, but in the aesthetic and as an homage to games of that time. What does it do for you? I mean, are you excited for? I know you're a big. You're not a Stardew person. I know you're a big Story of Seasons, Harvest Moon kind of person. Like, does this? What are your reactions to this game?
I really like the aesthetic, and I think 90s anime, that sort of vintage era, is making a big comeback, like not just within games, but just like in the artist circles that I've seen that I follow on Twitter. A lot of the fan art they do about like Genshin or Honkai Star, a lot of artists are doing that in the 90s style. It's really popular. And a lot of it is sort of like based on like Sailor Moon or like any of your Magical Girl series from that era. So the art style definitely caught my eye. I think when it comes to these games, at least for me personally, like what keeps me invested in the grind of farming your turnips and like raising your cows and all of that is really about the relationships between the characters. Like first and foremost, like, do I feel motivated enough to explore the game and to really have that connection with other characters? And the second thing is honestly, like, how hot are the character portraits? Because like I think that's why I'm not a big Stardew person. Like I just don't feel anything for a bunch of pixels. I'm sorry, unpopular opinion. But with Story of Seasons, the designs just get better and better with each remake. And I'm really excited for the one that's coming up. And the same with Field of Mistria. Like I need to kind of get more into it and then like watch the trailers a bit better. But so far it seems like everyone's really attractive. It's like a really good design. And I think those are the two things that will make me like, all right, I'm going to grind this because I want to advance my relationship with X person, or I want to make enough money so I can buy stuff and continue the progress. Like that for me, it's always story and character driven when it comes to these kind of games.
Yeah, I think, well, one tidbit, I was just looking up the trailer as well. Like, I didn't realize that Toby Fox was doing some music on this game as well. So just super interesting. I completely missed that. But yeah, so it does seem like they're bringing some heavy hitters, or treating this game as if it's going to be a very, very polished experience. But dude, I mean, just talking about an homage to that era, like you said, like even the backgrounds, I think there was like checkered backgrounds as the menu. Like that is so old. Like it's so, in a way that's like, it just reminds you of a certain time of when games were coming out. I'm sorry, Leah from Stardew Valley isn't attractive enough for you. You know, my sincerest apology on behalf of Leah, my wife in Stardew Valley. We apologize.
I'm sure she's great. great. I'm sure she's got a great personality.
She's an artiste, all right? She's amazing. She sculpts. Yeah, but it's quite interesting because we talk about farming sims all the time. Like, I really try to get into farming sims after Stardew. Stardew was one of my first farming sim. And just nothing comes close to that experience. So I'm curious if this one is going to get me motivated enough to go through it, but it does. Like, from what I'm seeing, there's, I don't know how to describe it. There's like an X quality factor about this that just looks like it'll be the one that gets me back into a farming sim game. So wow, like, I'm excited. I love that this was showcased at the Wholesome Direct.
Yeah, definitely one that caught a lot of people's eyes for sure. Again, it just feels like, having a specific design. And I think if the trailer is condensed and compact enough to just be like, oh, okay, like, I noticed that, I'm going to go look into it later, is a thing. All right, we got two more I think we wanted to talk about. So I'll bring up the first one. So Venba, that had a really, really cool art style as well. And it reminded me, I think the way it was laid out like a Pixar short, like really heartwarming family at its core. That sort of storytelling, which is what made me kind of like have a double take at it. But it's basically, from what I've gathered so far, it's about, it's got a great like cooking sort of narrative towards it, right? It's like an Indian family and you're cooking like very Indian food, which I know for both of us, growing up in Malaysia and the Indian community being a very big part of Malaysia's community, like, we recognize some of the food. And again, just really great that it's bringing a culture that is less represented, especially in the games industry, to the forefront, and doing it in such a way that's like really beautiful, really cute, and just has a really cozy sort of family values kind of game is what I got. What did you think?
Yeah, I mean, just read out the quick description of it as well, right? To give us greater context on the listeners too, is Venba is a short narrative cooking game where you play as an Indian mom who immigrates to Canada with her family in the 1980s. Players will cook various dishes and restore lost recipes, holding branching conversations and exploring the story about family, love, loss, and more, right? If that is not the most indie-ass like description that gets me excited, I don't know what is, right? Because when you talk about indie games, we always even throughout the show, we've referenced, aesthetics and what they're going for in their art style, a lot of these tropes, and if they're executing on these tropes. I think one thing that is violently underrated in the indie experience is the magic of storytelling, where I often think indie games have much far spectacular stories than a lot of AAA games. And to me, I'm ready to cry. I'm ready to get excited, but all under the guise of food, which is the most Southeast Asian thing for me. But in a weird way of representation, it's like, we have obviously, like, here in Southeast Asia, there's a lot of Indian influences in our culture. We have a lot of Indian culture here in Malaysia specifically, right? But even just, talking about maybe cross Asian culture, where although this isn't a game about Southeast Asia, just the food choices are so Asian, I guess, where I'm curious how many people will pick up on it. Like, even just seeing fried fish in a pan.
Fried fish,
that's
I know.
Like, that's all you have to do. It's like, it's so weird how conceptually that is like such an Asian thing, But yeah, I'm ready to, it seems like it's one of those games where I'm ready to cry. I'm ready to get excited about some of the things that connect with me on a cultural level. But I'm also excited to see just overall representation in the game space from cultures that are not typically represented, whilst also telling a very endearing story from what it seems like.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think you've captured it perfectly. I didn't know that bit about how it was about a migrant family relocating to Canada. I think diaspora stories are always wonderful, and we've read lots of books about it. There's lots of films about it. So let's see some games, tell that story as well. Really cool. Yeah. Last one. Did you want to cover the last one? It's a very special one for.
Yeah, I want to talk about Everdeep Aurora. It's one of those ones where I vividly remember the reaction to that, right? Where we saw it on screen and the first thing you said, it was like, "Oh my God, that's the cat from Kiki's Delivery Service," which is undoubtedly true. It's undoubtedly true. But yeah, Everdeep Aurora by Nautilus Games. It looks like almost like, I think the closest thing that I can reference is as an inspiration is almost like a Hollow Knight type of game where you're exploring the depths of this fantasy world. But the differences here, it seems like it is non-combat. I think they've been explicit that it is non-combat. It's exploration based. But there's also something about this art style that is so mind-blowing to me, where I know we joke about it. Like I think both of us kind of identified that it was a Eastbird game. Like
before they said it was a Eastbird game.
Yeah, before, exactly. Just because of how whenever they publish games, it seems like there's a specific UI, UX kind of like outlet gameplay that they try to usually go for in their games. But to me, that's what gives it so much of its originality. Like, I think I remember seeing the map on the right side being like, oh, the map is just on the screen itself, and it's almost as if you have the cutout like a Game Boy screen in the middle where you're actually having the gameplay. Your items are on the left and then the map is on the right, all without having to pull up a menu per se. So it's small things like that where, again, we talk about innovation in independent games. Like, that is amazing. But to me, it's like, look, I'm a huge fan of Dark Souls. I'm a huge fan of Bloodborne. And I love these like gothic horror worlds where these fantasy creatures, they breathe new life in these fantastical fantasy kind of creatures. Everdeep Aurora seems to be doing that in its aesthetic as well with their characters. Like, we saw an owl, we saw this like frog creature thing with a hood. Like, there's something about these magical creature kind of like interpretations that just get me so good. So I'm excited for Everdeep Aurora, but I'm curious how the gameplay actually is at the end of the day. It looks like exploration, it looks like platforming, it looks like minigame oriented, but oh my god, this looks, I'm just so excited for this type of game. I don't know, like how do you feel about Everdeep Aurora?
Yeah, I guess just going back to our live stream, when I saw it, for some reason I was like, this looks like World of Horror, but it absolutely is nothing like World of Horror at the same time, right? Because it's cozy, there's non-combat, it's not a horror game at all, and the style is still different, but there was something about it that just made me think that. And I know you had a similar reaction to it. That's why we both came to the conclusion that it was a use break game. But I think we didn't want to say it because we were like, oh, like not all games, right? But it turned out that
it turns out it is all games that look like that will be published by Eastbread.
But the fact that it's non-combat, I feel like is really interesting because that both limits the gameplay style, but also opens up another area of opportunity. Like, you're not going to be smacking monsters left and right. You're literally an adorable cat. But like, how does this adorable cat like traipse through the world? And yeah, excited for that too. Really, really cool art style. I can kind of see it on a t-shirt for some reason. I can already imagine the merch and how great it's going to look. So very excited for that one.
I agree. Yeah, to close the Wholesome Direct segment, it's like, again, I'm so happy that these games exist. This showcase exists. For me, overall, the showcase itself wasn't as good as the year before, but for those that are listening to this podcast and maybe are more interested in the AAA stuff, and if you're listening to this segment, like, please, like, wish list these games, like, find the developers on Twitter, tweet about them. If you're a creator, if you're media, like, write articles, make a video about them, because I honestly think there are some hidden gems that do not deserve to be hidden. You know what I mean? So I love that Wholesome Direct is a platform for these independent games. But again, when you talk about innovation, when you talk about things that influence the overall industry, there are some stuff that are, I bet, that are going to be coming out of these games that will influence a bunch of other Wholesome games or just independent games in general. So I'm so excited by that concept.
Yeah, and I mean, if you think you're just into AAA games, like just try a game that might not be up your alley. I mean, look at Arief. Look at our last episode where Arief literally covers both Diablo on one end of the spectrum and Hello Good Boy on the other. To the point where even the Hello Good Boy devs who saw the video were like, this is a really interesting video. Who knew Diablo and Hello Good Boy could be in one video? But it's totally possible. And yeah, just open your mind into different kind of games that you wouldn't normally play, and you'll be really surprised by what you find, I think.
Yeah, I agree.
The next couple of showcases that we did, we can kind of go through those really quickly. We had Xbox, which is very, very new for me. I have been going in blind to these showcases, but Xbox in particular is not. I've never owned an Xbox, and I'm like 1 year into being a PC gamer, so it was a really, really new territory for me. What were the sort of the couple of things that caught your eye?
Yeah, I mean, again, talking about the showcase in general, I thought this was the best showcase at Summer Game Fest, or like, the whole Summer Game Fest showcase like slate, because Xbox really needed a win. They really needed to showcase games. They just needed some additional gusto to maybe their public perception, especially because of the Activision Blizzard deal falling in numerous instances, or also the extremely poor reviews for Redfall, and overall the fact that over the past couple of years we haven't seen a lot of properties from the Xbox first party lineup that have shined. They've come out and like they're there, but they haven't really explained themselves in the most fantastic way. I thought the showcase was awesome. Like the fact that it was just games, Game Pass, right? Like was really cool.
Like world premiere day one
exactly.
on Xbox Game Pass.
Exactly. But to me, I just like, again, you listen to Sarah Bond's part in that segment in that show, and then you listen to Phil Spencer's segment in that show, you can really tell that this is a team that is committed to their studio and committed to the success, even though they've taken a bunch of punches to the face. But I don't think we need to talk about much. Before we get to the big one, I just want to quickly talk about, I believe this is where, I think I'm completely wrong. Never mind. I'll keep that for the next one. I think the only thing to mention really is Starfield, and
literally
Starfield
half of the whole showcase. Yes.
Yeah.
I was blown away, I think, by the level of detail that they went into explaining. It felt like this game is not done yet. Like they've I felt like we met like every developer and their mom, like in talking about their favorite aspects of the game, the sheer number of things you could do in it. It's got combat, it's got like dating sim, visual novel elements where you get to know the people. There's the bit where we were like building the ship, and I think you likened it to the gummy ship in Kingdom Hearts.
Yeah.
Though you build your own weapons, and then even the character designs as well. It seems like it has sort of like different like trait trees, I suppose. It's like, oh, like a character that's like really affluent in like speaking, or a character that's really good in combat. Like you can build the characters in any way you want. I almost feel like I need to give up on my actual life and just like go into Starfield and live life there, because it's just so involved. It just has so many aspects to it. I'm like, how is this a game? This should be an entire world that we're just going into and living life there. This should be like a literal second life, is kind of how I felt about it. What did you think?
Yeah, I was rewatching it with a friend after as well, right? And just articulating the amount of breadth this game has, where I think we brought this up in the showcase again, right? Like, and I keep bringing this up, folks, because if you want to watch any of our live reactions after the fact, they're all up on YouTube for the most part. But I just want to really bring down the fact that it didn't stop. The Starfield Direct did not stop. Every single time you were like, oh, okay, we can end here. It seems like a great game. It's like, well, we're going to introduce a whole new mechanic.
It just keeps going. Yeah.
Again, conceptually, Reno, like this is what I love about, and what I was reflecting on over the past couple of days, where we're in an era of the industry that is so interesting to me, because Todd Howard literally said at the start of it, where this game is only possible now. This game is only possible now because of the state of technology in games, right? The state of technology out there, where similar to Zelda, right? Tears of the Kingdom, where there's like infamous tweets out there on the internet. I don't know who exactly mentioned them, but they said like, dude, there are 4 mechanics in here where 10, 15 years ago, that one mechanic would have been a whole Zelda game, like the main Zelda mechanic. So now there's like 4 in one, all 4 in Tears of the Kingdom. Similar to Starfield, base building, combat mechanics, character trait RPG, like gummy ship building, spaceship building, dog fights, world exploration, resource mining, like a campaign story. Like Starfield seems way too good to be true, and the only way that I can attribute this to is like the narrative is almost similar to Cyberpunk when it was being shown off before the disaster hit, where this game seems impossible and you could really live in it, and like there's so much care and heart put into this. But let me tell you the most interesting thing about the Starfield Direct to me: the developers look happy, the developers look excited. Like jokes aside, the games industry, no one looked
tired. Everyone looked like they got their 8 hours.
Maybe just for filming that segment, right? Like I'm waiting for the Jason Schreier hit, or no clip documentary of how stressful it is to put that thing together. But the beautiful, beautiful, beautiful thing about the Starfield Direct really wasn't even about Starfield for me. It was the fact that I love hearing developer voices, and they showcased developer voices, but they showed more than 10 people during that video. And the fact that they're excited about their game and playing their own game and experiencing their own game gets me so excited. When somebody said like, hey, this is how I like to play Starfield, coming from somebody who worked on Starfield, it's just like, my God, that's so cool. It's like, you're a fan of your own game too. There's nothing more exciting than that.
That part was really cool when it's like it showcased like how much they love it, but also how many different ways there are to play a game. There's no right or wrong way to play Starfield. Like some of them were like, oh, I just like causing chaos, and then some of them are like, oh, I just like base building, and it's like cool. So we can all kind of do different things within this game. I will say like I did see some comments which made me think as well about the game, like on Twitter, which was that it's not your typical kind of like dystopian, like space is terrible kind of game. Like a lot of other space games are following that narrative of like deep space. It's scary. It's unknown. This just felt like I don't know what it is. It's like space is livable. It's like in the future's not that bad. So it didn't sort of paint like a very dark brush to the game, which I think is also good for like if you want to spend a lot of time in there and just not come out being depressed, right? It's just a different take on, I guess, on the space theme or like the futuristic theme.
Are you genuinely thinking about picking it up? Because I don't know if these types of games are in your wheelhouse. To be honestly transparent with you, these games are not in my wheelhouse. I've never been a Fallout person. I've never been a Western RPG person. Do you think you're going to pick this one up?
I think if enough of us do in our friend group, I might, just because it sounds like a wild experience. I don't know if this is like a controversial take, but it just reminds me of how like the Avatar, the Blue People movies, were not my thing, but people just end up going into it for the experience. So this, like, again, like it's similar, like exactly as you said, it's not normally my kind of game, not my kind of aesthetic, not anything I would not be interested in. But I guess the direct did its job, because now now I'm paying attention. Now I might actually do it.
Yeah, this gets me excited like no other Bethesda game has in the past before. Upgraded engine, but I can't emphasize to you enough that I think I said it whilst we were reacting to it. I'm just so glad it has a story. Where I feel like games nowadays can get so whisked away by the tech, by the amounts of gameplay mechanics you can have. But to me, I'm just so excited to experience the story alongside all these mechanics. So I'm waiting for this 1-2 punch. I want to just go back a bit and talk about one game that I missed from the Xbox showcase, called Jusant, which is a game from Don't Nod, and it's interesting indie art style with little eyes. I know you commented about like the eyes being like very cartoony and a little bit odd. But it's like, it seems like a game. It's like exploration. It's all focused on climbing as well. And I know climbing has been a huge recreational activity over the past like couple of years, right? But this game looks really exciting. But can I just say that I tweeted this out, but Don't Nod to me is, I don't know what the heck Don't Nod is on, but the fact that 3 of their most recently announced games all have a different art direction and a different art style is mind-blowing. Where you have Jusant, where it's like when the Don't Nod logo came up, I was like, oh my God, it's Don't Nod. Like, what the heck is that? You know what I mean? The fact that they have that, they have another darker, I can't remember what title that was. They have Banisher's Ghost of New Eden, which is kind of like a darker, almost Witcher-esque, Diablo-like kind of game. And then they have Harmony as well. Harmony The Fall of Reverie, which is kind of like an indie, more narrative experience. And then they have Jusant. It's like, I don't know what is going on at Don't Nod, but it's as if they were like, hey, we're going to just go into 10 different directions and just absolutely kill it and make games that are just beautiful and engaging in that way. So, I mean, my history with Don't Nod is I love Life is Strange. Life is Strange is one of my favorite games of all time. And Don't Nod developed the first one. So I just want to acknowledge that, like, talk about developer surprises at this summer games, time frame. Don't Nod, the concept of Don't Nod's games and the fact that they're all different just blew me out of the water.
I mean, there's no bigger flex than that, right? Like, we can do anything. We can design anything. Or like making games that people don't expect is just such a cool thing. I don't have as much background on this, but I really loved the way you lit up when you were like, oh my God, it's Don't Nod. I'm like, that's really, really cool. What a big surprise for fans. We got one more showcase to kind of cover. This was the last one. The one that I mentioned was on actual like normal hours for us in Southeast Asia. So this was the Capcom showcase. I went in going, oh God, if they repackage another Ace Attorney game, I'm gonna like flip the table. And that was literally, I think, the second thing they showed. They showed Apollo Justice Ace Attorney trilogy, so a compilation of another 3 of the older Ace Attorney games. So one being featuring Phoenix Wright, and the other 2 featuring Apollo Justice, which is like the second protagonist later on in the series. But then after we finished the stream and I saw some of the tweets of our friends who are like massive Ace Attorney fans, like way bigger than I am, and them being so excited about it, I was like, actually, it's not that bad. Like, a lot of people didn't get to play the game maybe because it wasn't part of their childhood, or, they were a bit younger. And the way that now that they're remastering it for another generation, I'm like, that's great. Like, Ace Attorney games are amazing. And I really hope everyone, including yourself, picks it up this time around.
What are you talking about? I played every Ace Attorney game. Yeah. Don't cancel me, man. Don't cancel me. There was was it Johanna on Twitter?
Johanna, it was June. No, it was Brian. So some of our friends came after you on Twitter, but Brian came after you on WhatsApp, and it was.
What did you say on WhatsApp?
Arief has never played Ace Attorney ? Like 10 times 10.
Oh my
And this was
God.
just, I think this was just after both of us had like gone to bed because we just, had like 4 days in a row of like streaming at stupid o'clock. And I think you saw the message and you're like, goes back to bed.
Oh yeah, I remember that. I was way too tired to entertain Brian's like judgment, Yeah, I'm excited for Ace Attorney fans. It's like what I do feel like I miss out. I've said this on the podcast before. The reason why I do want to play at least one of them is because people like and I literally said this on like episode 2 of the podcast. People froth at the mouth at Ace Attorney. It's like, oh my God, it's Ace Attorney. It's like fucking like just shove that down my throat. It's like I don't know what it is, and I'm so like I don't know what it is about this property, but it never been my kind of game. Never been excited for it, but I mean the character is iconic, right? So glad this was at the Capcom showcase. Like more Ace Attorney, great. Like we'll see if I play it. I'm excited for you all. Don't get me wrong, I'm excited for you all, but we'll see.
It's all right. I'll point a gun at your forehead and be like, Ace Attorney, no.
Objection.
You know the memes, exactly. That's the thing. You know the memes, so just play the game with the meme. The last one I think to note, I guess, from Capcom Showcase is Exoprimal, another game that neither of us probably thought much about until we saw the trailer. I saw it at Tokyo Game Show last year for the first time, and it was just this giant T-Rex statue figurine. I think it was moving, and then like Exoprimal as like the logo on it. And I thought like, great, another dinosaur game. Moving on. Like I'm not a Jurassic Park kind of girl, but the way that they sort of laid it out in the trailer, where it's like co-op. As soon as they said co-op, I was like, oh, okay. Like I will play a game that's not in my wheelhouse if my friends are with me. And then they've got the characters with their exoskins. And the fact that you can like kind of change the different skins. I think I know you really like that because I think you didn't like the original design, but you like the customized ones. And just that it's not your straight up, I guess, Jurassic Park narrative where you're just fighting dinosaurs. There's like a futuristic element to it. It sounds like a sci-fi plus dinosaur fantasy all sort of like mashed into one, right? So kind of looked interesting for me.
Yeah, Exoprimal is a big surprise to me, more so because I didn't realize it was a live service game, or they were treating it as a live service game, which again is what we brought up prior. But they're releasing a whole, bevy of updates. There's a collaboration with Street Fighter, and it indicated that there will be other Capcom collaborations down the line as well. But to me, what gets me going for Exoprimal is again character customization, because mech design and suit design is very hit or miss for me. Where there's some that I fall in love with, and some that I just don't vibe with the design, and it makes me not want to play some games, right? Or get really into some properties. But the customization for the suits was like, oh, okay, maybe I will get it. But I mean, I'll just repeat the narrative that a lot of people have said in the past. The fact that you have like thousands of dinosaurs in ragdoll physics dropping onto like this building as you shoot more dinosaurs that are running at you, and it all seems to be running really well. Again, is an indication of the state of the technology in games that they're able to pull it off, but also just the fact that like we can entertain these wacky ideas in a modern context and make gameplay feel good and have it visually executed well as well, as opposed to back in maybe like the PS2 PS1 era, that would have been just like a cutscene.
Like it would be like a meme game. It'd be like, what is this stupid game about like space and dinosaurs? But now it's like, no, it's freaking awesome because of the mechanics are fluid, the graphics are good. It's like an actually good game. It's like, okay, we can entertain your weird narratives as long as you deliver like proper gameplay.
Yeah, I'm all for new IP. So we'll see where this ends up. We'll see how many of our friends jump into it. But yeah, great. Great to see that as part of the Capcom show. Like, great to see people like them excited about showing off Exoprimal as well.
Yeah. It was overall, I mean, this whole week was exhausting as hell. I can't deny that, but it was great. We got to see lots of different games. And to 20M listeners out there, like, drop us a note in the comments or wherever you're listening to this. Like, what has been a game that caught your eye? What is a game that you're definitely wishlisting or playing on day one? Like, we'd love to hear from all of you. But speaking of showcases, did you have time to do anything at all this week besides just get through it?
No, not at all. I just slept a lot. No, I've been trying to play a little bit. I mean, we'll reserve some thoughts for some future episodes, but was able to spend some time with Final Fantasy 16 demo, which is really exciting. The game comes out in a couple of days, so excited to experience that. I have a whole slew of thoughts, but I think I'll save that for our eventual review of Final Fantasy 16. I've been putting a lot of hours into Zelda. I think I've been trying to like just, hey, you got to finish Zelda before you play other games. But just doing that kind of stuff. I know you played a certain game that we want to talk about, a game that I'm not very familiar with, please tell me, Reno. Tell me about We Love Katamari and Royal Reverie. We Love Katamari plus Royal Reverie. How am I supposed to say this?
I don't know if it's plus. Is it and? It's just one of those things.
Yeah.
It's like, is it Spy Family or Spy X Family? Yeah. So this week I play We Love Katamari plus and Royal Reverie, which is a remaster of We Love Katamari from the PlayStation 2 era. Are you at all familiar with what Katamari is about?
In concept, I am. And the only thing I know about Katamari is just hearing the word Katamari. And I don't even know what that means. So the first question is, what does that mean? And the second thing is that you just roll up a bunch of junk. Literally, just like a ball rolling sim, right? Like, I don't know.
So yeah, so you've basically nailed it. So Katamari in Japanese means clump, which is like the most perfect word or descriptor for this game, where you're a character who's just rolling this. I guess the only description for it is like a super ultra adhesive ball that picks up everything, and the ball just gets bigger and bigger. And I guess that is the goal for most of these levels, which is like to get as big of a Katamari, big of a clump as possible. And I think I don't know as much about the history behind the game. I know that the developer just really wanted like a cool mechanic that you could build upon. And so the story is a little bit unhinged and very secondary to the game, but it's still, I think because it's so unhinged, it's become kind of meme worthy. So in the original game, which is called Katamari Damacy, you're the prince of all cosmos, and your father is the king of all cosmos. And we'll have an image here that shows you what they look like, because it's just insane. And basically your father gets really drunk one day and decides to just destroy everything in the universe, like all the planets, all the stars, everything's just gone. And then he like wakes up and he's like, oh, I kind of messed up there. All right, now son, time to rebuild the universe. And I don't know how that works, because I think everything is gone except planet Earth. So what you do is you're just rolling up crap all over Earth, and then the king turns your Katamaris, your clumps, into planets. So he's rebuilding the universe. This is the original plot. In We Love Katamari, you've already done the rebuilding, and for some reason, no one remembers that your father destroyed everything. So they're all like, "Oh, we're a big fan of the king." So you just kind of go around and help people with their problems, which all end up just being like Katamari can solve it for them.
And what about it? Like outside of the story, I feel like, I mean, the story is one thing. I never hear anybody talk about the story of Katamari, but what is it about this game? What is it about this franchise that makes it so revered in the game's ecosystem and the people that play it?
So I think I streamed it a couple nights ago on Twitch, and something a lot of my community members were just saying, like, this game is so creative. I could never think of this in a million years. And it's so true. It's such a simple premise of just rolling up stuff, but to turn that into a game and to turn that into something so replayable is just genius. It's really addictive gameplay as well. In the previous episode, in the Diablo episode, actually, we talked about, jingles and like sounds that give you that kind of hit of dopamine. It's like that with Katamari. As you roll the ball and you pick up stuff, there's like a little tuck, tuck kind of sound, and then a little bit of a vibration kickback in your controller. So it's so satisfying to roll things up. And the bigger the things are, the more satisfying it is. So it just keeps you in that loop. And it's such a mindless game as well. So what I did while I've been sort of playing this game and reviewing it, like, I'm like calling my mom and we're just chatting on the phone, and I'm just like playing, because you don't need to think while you're doing it. And it's just like really relaxing, really low stakes. I think there's a mode in the game that's separate to all the levels in the story levels, where it's just like infinite rolling. So you just keep going. The music is really relaxing. It's kind of weird at the same time. It's like the music's like Katamari, Katamari, Katamari. Like people are just repeating the phrase over and over, and then some like Japanese words. But then it's like a jazz rendition of We Love Katamari, or like a punk edition of We Love Katamari. And it's just really kind of wholesome vibes, at least until you lose. So if you don't complete the mission of like getting your Katamari to that right size, you get to this cutscene where your father is just like mad pissed at you, and it's like thunderstorming, and he's like, all we wanted was this and you couldn't even deliver. It's like full Asian dad, like, I am disappointed in you, son. This is the funniest thing. But yeah, I think that's why it's a game that people love so much. It's comforting. It's really funny. It's like zero stakes. Doesn't really require much skill to play, and just has like really, really cute animation as well. So yeah, I can definitely say we love Katamari.
I don't know if we love Katamari.
You love Katamari. I think you should definitely give it a try. There is one level I want to talk about though. So, as I mentioned before, like, so you have characters that are going like, hey hey, and then you have to go up to them and they're like, oh, I need to clean my room, which makes sense. It's like, okay, well, the Katamari will kind of roll around in this sort of like trash room and you're just picking up all of that person's junk, right? This one particular group of characters, it's like a pair of siblings. And as you get into the level, you realize it's kind of a riff off Hansel and Gretel because they're like a brother and sister, and you're rolling up candy in this world, and there's like a witch flying around as well, and when you get big enough you can roll her up too. But the objective of the level is the siblings are like, we want you to roll a Katamari big enough that you can roll us up. And like, you can roll people up in the game, but there's never like explicitly they're like, you know, outing they've got some kind of kink, like, oh, roll us up please. And I'm like, okay. So the level only ends when you've got them big enough that you can roll both of them up.
Wow, I'm so happy for you. Thank you for, you know, doing them justice and giving them what they needed. Yeah, the wackiness of this is like, it just so reminds me of a certain era. I know we talked about, you know, previous games that reminded us of eras of games. This so reminds me of that like PS2 wacky era as well, right? Where I'm also thinking about games like conceptually Katamari is in the same bucket as like Parappa the Rappa and like Patapon and like these kinds of more independent experiences that are just such high concept, just fun gameplay where it just reminds you of a certain time. So it's almost as like Katamari is like so much of a legacy game in my mind where I respect it so much, but I've never played it. But I'm so glad to hear that it seems like it is it still works in a modern context, you know, so that these remasters and these is just justified.
Yeah, I mean, I will say the remaster is loyal almost to a fault to the original in that I didn't really feel there was anything new. I think the royal reverie part of the title just means that your character, because you get the prince and then you can also get his like cousins, which you can use as in they're basically just skins of the character that's pushing the ball. I think royal reverie means that like you can unlock the one where you play your father when he was a boy. So just like mini King of All Cosmos. But aside from that, I don't think there's too much different. So if you're kind of coming back into it as a previous Katamari player, you might be disappointed that there isn't anything new, or you might be like, oh great, I can now play Katamari again, but this time on like my new PC or my new Switch or something like that. But definitely, again, as we talked about before with like the Ace Attorney games, like remasters are not just for the nostalgia, not just for people like you and me who have that relationship. It's for the new generation, for the kids of today to experience an IP that's just been enduring, which is fantastic.
It's so good to hear you talk about like, you can kind of like sense the excitement, right, for games that are being revisited this way, and I'm so happy. But
you're seriously that I'm happy for you.
It's so similar to Ace Attorney. It's like I'm so happy for you.
So happy for you. The emphasis on you.
But yeah, I'll check it out. Obviously, like go through some footage and some B-roll for this, obviously, right? But I mean, yeah, it just seems like it's good to have at least remasters of games that are so beloved as well, because there are some properties where I feel like they're locked to a certain generation or a certain graphical limits. So I love it when these, it's not even obscure. This isn't an obscure title, but I love it. The concept of having these like remasters go out to the public as well. And where even if it doesn't make like the biggest statement in the world, it's like, it's still for the fans or some newer people who might jump into the title or the series rather with these releases.
Absolutely. And I guess speaking of, I don't know, enduring games or IP that have lasted the test of time, you've been posting about a certain card game in the last 48 hours.
Yeah, let me tell you. I mean, I'm a big, for those that don't know, we brought it up on the show before, but I'm a big Magic the Gathering person. I used to play a lot of Magic the Gathering growing up. And again, you know, just entertaining the non-games aspect of games. TCG has always been a special place in my heart. Grew up playing Pokemon and all that kind of stuff. But Magic just dropped one of the coolest collaborations in the history of Magic, where they integrated the Lord of the Rings into the latest set of Magic products. And you can kind of see that in the background here. I bought a set booster box yesterday, and I'm opening packs. But for those that don't know, Magic the Gathering is its own game within itself, has its own lore, has its own universe. But you know, since they got acquired by Hasbro, they've been able to integrate more properties like Transformers in some of their cards. It's never a big part because it's still Magic, but this is probably their biggest collaboration whereby they fully integrated a whole set solely dedicated to Lord of the Rings. So every card that you're opening is Lord of the Rings. It's not even inspired. It's literally Lord of the Rings type cards, and mechanics are very similar to Lord of the Rings. So I'm just blown away. I needed to talk about this because there's these special cards. Like, just talk about the collectors in us, right? There's these special showcase cards that are aesthetically different than a lot of other Magic cards, and I'll pull some of them up on the screen. But for those that might be watching just like my feed right now, it's like similar things like this, where you have Gollum just beautifully illustrated on a Magic the Gathering card like that. And to me, Reno, it's just, I've never seen artists and artistic vision like articulated this way in a collaboration so well before. So it just gets me going. But did you know that there's a card out there that is a 1-of-1 serialized card that currently has a bounty for over $1 million in this set?
Which card is that?
It is nothing. It is obviously, it's the One Ring. It is called the One Ring. They literally made, because card games are very gacha-esque, and we've talked about that before, right? But it is literally a 1-of-1 card set where you can only get in a collector's booster box. There's only one made in the entire world, so that's why a lot of people are running to stores to pick up this product, because if you pull that one card, it is 1-of-1. And there are bounties out there. I don't remember if Post Malone has a bounty on there, but a couple TCG stores, a couple major Magic personalities have also put a bounty on it, where it's like, hey, if you pull that 1-of-1 card, we'll give you $1 million, and like a bunch of other perks. So I know a lot of people are rushing to stores to get it, but what a crazy concept, where the One Ring in Lord of the Rings is literally like people are like just running, burning houses to the ground to like find this product.
Literally like the golden ticket in Charlie and the Chocolate Factory.
Literally. Like literally, you know what I mean? Like it's quite insane.
I am not super familiar with Magic the Gathering, although I've got lots of friends like you who have been playing it. So I've seen it pop up a lot on my timeline and things like that. I do like how, I guess, like expertly they've sort of weaved in all these different types of IPs into their game. Like I know there was you mentioned the Transformers one. There's another one. I don't think it's a specific IP, but there was like this sort of like cyberpunk collection as well. I remember that
they did.
Really big.
They did Kamigawa a couple of sets ago, which was like this Japanese cyberpunk-esque collab, which is really
and
cool.
Then I think what I really liked, the last one I saw was probably quite a while back now, the Amano collection.
Yes.
So the artist who does a lot of the Final Fantasy artwork, right? He had his own couple of cards. That's really, really cool that they could incorporate all of this. And it just kind of fits really well. And I don't want to be like no shade to Fortnite, but like when Fortnite does collabs, it's always just like so left of field, but that's just their brand, right? But with Magic the Gathering, every collab I've seen with a different IP, it's like, oh, that kind of makes sense, or like that kind of works. So
yeah, I mean, on your note of authentic collaborations, right? Yeah, the Amano cards are really cool. They collaborate with a couple artists. There's a set that I got from Arcane. So they have cards directly collaborated with the Arcane team, and their existing Magic cards, it's just the art is from the Arcane moments. And the magical thing about, pun intended, the magical thing about Magic the Gathering is that even the flavor text on the cards indicate story moments from these properties, or even the mechanics of a certain set takes inspiration from these collaborations. So the last thing I'll say about this is that on this Lord of the Rings set, there's this concept of the One Ring tempting you, and it's a whole game mechanic where only in the cards in the Lord of the Rings set does this mechanic pop up where the One Ring tempts you, and then you have to give that One Ring to one of your creatures, and it has both buffs and debuffs on it. So it's just like, again, it's not for a cash grab. It's not just for, plastering a skin on something. There's something a lot deeper to these collaborations. But yeah, talk about game collaborations. I mean, they had the Metal Gear artist do some art as well. They had a Castlevania artist do some art. I have all those cards in my collection too. So just to celebrate, as we're talking about indie games on this episode, as we're talking about celebrating video games during the summer period, there's no better time to potentially explore other entertainment avenues if you're listening to the podcast, like TCG, where this Magic the Gathering set is something that is so amazing and mind-blowing to me that I thought you would appreciate in concept. So I had to bring it up. But man, like there's nothing like gacha, literally like this game mechanics like gacha, like integration of properties, booster pack openings, like man, just games, video games, board games, card games, they're all just so flippin' fun.
It's awesome. I'm happy for you. I am very happy for you.
We just flipped roles. It's like not for me, but I'm so excited for you.
Well, that was a super packed episode. We covered so many games. I think probably the most number of games that we've ever done in 20M history. We covered Katamari, covered Lord of the Rings, Magic the Gathering. Really, really good episode. thank you for your time, Arief.
Yeah, thanks. Thank you, Reno. This is such a I know we're both super tired, but man, to experience the showcases, live streaming. I mean, for those that are listening, the fact that you can go watch our VODs of our live stream, it's some of the first couple official live streams that we've done on the 20am podcast. So go check those out on YouTube if you want to relive some of those moments with us. I know we didn't even talk about the Star Wars game. We didn't even talk about some of the other indies that we saw throughout the showcases and stuff like that. Yeah, just cool to make that kind of content. And I hope everybody else is also enjoying the summer period right now.
Absolutely. And if you like this episode, make sure to check out the one just passed, which was our Diablo episode, where we riff on this most enduring franchise alongside one of our friends. His name is Gerald Chen, a co-founder of The Amazing Geek Culture based out in Singapore. He really schools us, educates us on what it means to play Diablo as someone like myself who's never played Diablo, and Arief, who is going through his baby's first Diablo moment right now. So that was a really, really great episode. We also talk about Hello Good Boy in there, one of your favorite indie games to come out this year so far. It was a great episode. And of course, not forgetting, we did a bit of an Oshinoko sort of discussion. That was my favorite part, personally.
Yeah, more anime. And I think just for the viewers that are listening, I'm so glad that we can talk about some of these other nerd culture stuff towards maybe the end of our episodes. We're still a games podcast. We're still going to bring on some guests from the video games industry. But we're all nerds here, right? So let's talk about some of the stuff that really get us going outside of games. So just happy to share the space with you all that are listening to the 20am podcast.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks so much for listening. And as always, you can find us on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, and I guess right now maybe on Spotify at 20am Podcast. We'll see you all on the next episode. Take care, guys. Bye. Say bye, Arief.
Oh, bye.
Bye.